Right. Welcome everyone to one of the first of Silicon Canal's very informal chats with people from the tech community. And today I'm chatting with Jim Seconde, who's a dev advocate at Jump24, a local Birmingham-based software agency. And in particular today, we're going to talk about one of their latest products, Order.net. So Jim, can you introduce yourself and take it away with what Order is, please?
Hello. Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me. So yes, hello, I'm Jim Seconde, developer advocate at Jump24. I haven't actually been at Jump for that long. I've been there for about 2 months now. And when I came on board, it was interesting times. First of all, I got onboarded right at the start. I wouldn't say the start, actually, I'd say in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, which was quite, I think it was obviously challenging for everyone, and COVID-19 is why this product exists in the first place that I'm going to talk about. So I got onboarded and then got put on this project called Order. And it was a logical thing for a developer advocate to be put onto it, because there's a couple of aspects I'll go into about the project. But Order came about because on the 22nd or the 23rd of March, I can't remember when the lockdown, when Boris Johnson went on TV and said, right, that is it, pubs and restaurants are to close, etc. So Tim Joslin and Dan Nunes at Jump24 just sat down one night and thought, this is going to absolutely wallop the economy. What can we do about it? What can we do as an agency, a web agency in Birmingham, to try and do something for the greater good, to try and get businesses maybe to give them something they can use, to try and stay open, specifically things like local takeaways, like a lot smaller scale. And the thinking behind it came from, some people would think instantly, there was a silver bullet for this, which is Just Eat and or Deliveroo or Uber Eats or something like that. But that's negating the fact that you lock into their systems and you lock into their community that they've built and their products, vendor lock-in stuff, and they take large cuts of it. This was, what can we do that's a free service, and it's really as simple as you can possibly make it, where it's, here is, I'm a merchant, sign up, create a menu, and then you instantly have a site on Order.net, and you have a URL, then you just direct people to there. It was the shortest amount of journey, like the shortest journey possible.
Just to jump in there, obviously I think my first thought there was, it sounds like Just Eat or whatever, but you mentioned there it's free, so how is that possible?
Yeah, so there's kind of a mixture of things. I mean, first of all, on principle, we have in the actual project, we have a set of guidelines and we have some ethics about the fact that this is an open source project, and and to actually use it, it's free. Because if you want to do something to help, if you try and charge for it and you try and make it a service, then it is another Just Eat, and then you're trying to take on a multi-million-pound corporation. There's absolutely no point in doing that whatsoever. It's free because elsewhere, we had, from other projects and for working with AWS, we had quite a lot of AWS credits to use up on hosting, which, instead of just using sort of EC2 hosting credits and things like that for our own usage, we just thought, well, why don't we've got so much, why don't we just use it to host this free platform? And with the cost of doing cloud stuff like that, I mean, the real cost has been development time. Obviously, it has been quite expensive. It's gone from it was an MVP that was designed and delivered for what we wanted it to do in 6 weeks, eating into developer time, where it costs time and money, and we always had the target to never charge for it. So yeah, quite expensive. But I think the answer is ethically, because we could, and also it works for the company as well, because it might sound like it's expensive to offer something free, but to do an open source project where your company's work is 100% in the open, and it is. You can see that was the whole point of it. It's a showcase of the kind of work we do. So, you have to be honest about projects like this. You can't try and pull the wool over people's eyes. So if we were honest ourselves about what we were trying to do, it's look at what we can do as an MVP in 6 weeks. It's free, but if you want the kind of quality that we do and you want to see the kind of work we do, then here you go. So
yeah, just on that open source, I mean, I think it's a word that gets bounced around, and I think people are sometimes take it as, well, it's open source, I can just go and use it, and it's easy, and if I'm going to make something open source, it instantly becomes cool and trendy. Like, can you just give a bit more detail as to what open source really means? And like you touched on it there, saying you're putting your you're not at risk, but your code's going out there, your work's going out there. So yeah, two questions really behind that, Jim. Like, why did you really want to make sure this was open source? And secondly, just what is it really?
I think it became a sort of once the goals of the project were quite clear that this was going to be a free thing to try and help out merchants. It just seems like a logical choice to say, well, if it's free, why don't we can be more transparent. Why don't we just say that it's open source? Once I was brought on board as a developer advocate and someone that deals with open source, with contacts in multinational companies that have enormous open source projects every day, it's quite clear that doing that is very, very hard. So it's quite an interesting aspect, because what I've seen in the local Birmingham, in the local Birmingham tech scene, I would say Birmingham, West Midlands, let's say, is if someone says open source, they work on something, and they say they make a decision. Well, someone else can use this if they want to, and then they just put it on GitHub.
Sure.
And then it gets left, and that's it. I think I've seen that time and time again, and you're left with graveyards. And if someone wants to come in and interact with that, they think, oh, I've got this thing that's like a plugin for something, for like WooCommerce or Shopify or something like that. And they go, oh, if I get this WordPress thing it's some company in Birmingham, they've done it. And what they've done is the company has made something and then thought, well, let's open source it to say, oh, we're giving something back, but they just do it. And then you click on the GitHub link and you just see like a load of issues from 2 years ago, and no one's done any commits. There's no maintainers. No, it's a complete afterthought of what open source actually means. Order is being approached from an open source project first and foremost. Therefore, we need to structure it as such, as if it was Linux. It's at that level, because there's no. If you want your governance to be correct and you want contributors to adhere to things like codes of conduct and contributing guidelines and best practices, because it is coded in Laravel, it will have some Vue.js as well. Because it's coded in Laravel, that doesn't mean the entry point is let's go in and just put whatever. Because it raises absolutely tons of questions in open source, such as if someone comes in and goes, this is a Laravel project, okay, great. I'm going to not adhere to any of the coding standards that we've done, and I'm going to just bolt on a load of thing that talks to like a custom symphony composer package. And then you're just left with the Wild West. And with open source, you can really get the Wild West very, very quickly. Yeah. So you have to be very, very cautious and think about a lot of bigger things. In a way, I think it brings into the way we write applications, this web applications in this day and age, where everyone laughs at the fact that you write it with 12 factor apps and things like that, where you build it with Docker and Kubernetes to scale, even though you've had 10 users and it doesn't really take off when you pull it. But we plugged Elastic Beanstalk into it, so if there was to be 1 million concurrent users, we coded it so it could scale up. Open source is kind of the same, I feel, that you have to prepare for that amount of take up. And if it dies, it dies. But you have to do this with absolutely no expectation of getting anything back. Yeah, absolutely. So if you see people that, do want to contribute to this project, they also, are very interested in it. How does that sit from Jump's point of view? Is it something that you've built and now open sourced it, but it's not to be touched, or it's going to be constantly having people contribute it somewhere in the middle? How does that work? Sure. Yeah. So So from once at Jump, we'd internally got to an MVP kind of state, and we migrated it from, we were using Atlassian, using Bitbucket, and we migrated it to GitHub. Once we've gone to GitHub, we hooked in Circle CI, and then sort of got it to our we got it to our GitHub state, and that's where we wanted it. Then we started structuring the organization around it. So the way it's structured is we created a GitHub organization called Order, and that is effectively a separate entity from Jump24 from its creators. So that has a core maintenance team, which are, of course, the Jump24 developers for now, because we wrote it. From then on, because it's a separate entity, all of the work that we do on it gets treated as if we're a pool of developers that are maintainers in order.net. So that then means that it disconnects Jump in that way. So if someone wants to come on board and they want to say, I would like to be a developer on this, and they start submitting pull requests, all of the governance and what the project looks like is all then governed by Order, not by Jump24. That's how you separate it. It gives you things like, if we were looking to go down the GitHub sponsorship kind of routes, that instead of Jump's money being pumped in, you could, as a merchant or as a development or as another software developer, you could sponsor the core maintenance team. You sponsor order.net, or Order as in the organization. Not the money doesn't go to Jump, it goes to Order, and then that pays for the developers in Order to go and develop a feature for you.
Yeah, from what you said at the start there, it's obviously something that is needed in the current time. I'm sure, in terms of clientele, I suppose, who are you really aiming at? Because like you say, that the large companies that have already got Just Eat or Deliveroo signed up, they're paying those costs. Maybe a product like this isn't suitable. So, who is this really aimed to help out?
This is kind of the target audience here are smaller businesses that primarily, a good example to drop in here is the feature that we're working on now, which is honestly going to be a big struggle. But since on the 4th of July, Boris announced that pubs and restaurants could open, but then it had to be table service. So we have scrambled in a sprint to think, okay, we need to try and get that out. Whether we reach that target, I'll be honest, it's going to be a miracle if we do it. But we managed to do the original MVP in time. So that kind of ties in with who we're aiming this at. It's the way that it's structured is the smallest amount of clicks and the smallest amount of UX to get from being a merchant that wants to like a coffee house or something like that, where or a small local takeaway business. For takeaway businesses, is probably not that great an example, because if you're a pizza place in Birmingham, then you're probably already on Just Eat. But that's a different. You're hooking into the Just Eat ecosystem where people go on to Just Eat and say, "I want a pizza," and there it is. It's for independents mainly that don't really have the time or inclination to pay and hook into those systems. To use Deliveroo, they normally take up to 30% a transaction.
Wow.
And there is setup involved in that. It's a bit more long-winded, and it's costing your business money. And when you're an independent, your margins are so incredibly fine. And what spurred us on really is the independent scene in Birmingham, which in the last 5 years is really sort of taken off with independent Birmingham and Digbeth Dining Club and things like this, especially say the street food scene, where it would just cost too much as a small independent vendor. Say that the vendors that we have at Fusion Meetup, if anyone's actually been to Fusion Meetup, and we have street food vendors that regularly go to that. They don't particularly necessarily want to sign up to Just Eat and Deliveroo, and also the transactions and the ordering and the ecosystem is not owned by you; it's owned by them. So your sort of business to customer relationship is just completely managed as a middleman via them. With Order, if you use Order that's hosted by Jump, it's your data, and you can obviously have it if you want. If you don't want any involvement with Jump whatsoever, it's open source. So with what we're working on now is, for instance, one-click installs with Heroku and with AWS Lightsail. Take it. Or if it doesn't have a feature you want, fork it. And you can fork it off and just run it yourself. And you can run your own order.net for your small independent business, or for a group of businesses, or for a local area. If you are from Halesowen, or you're from Hall Green and there's a group of small businesses, have you heard of this work that Jump24 did? It was, well, let's say that Jump24, the name is kind of irrelevant now, that what this product that order.net does. So that's kind of that's the target that we're looking for.
Yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, like you say, it's, I know so many people who are independently owned cafes or bars or pubs, and they've just basically shut their doors because, like you say, the margins are so fine they can't risk doing, say, delivery systems and having their kitchens open full time and all these sorts of things. What would you need to get set up? You mentioned it's very easy, but do I need a website? Do I need to have technical developer knowledge to do this? What do I need so I can get up and start sending my coffees straight to my regular customers?
Cool. Yeah. So there's two approaches to it. I mean, I'm on the engineering side of it, of course, as a DevRel, and then we have people at Jump20 like Ollie and Dan at Jump, and Tim, who are more from the merchant kind of perspective. So if we go from the client's perspective, the minimum kind of clicks to get up and running, you go to order.net and you go, I want to sign up. And then it will just take you through a step-by-step process. At the end of it, you'll have a URL / your store. And that is it. You then take payments, you hook it up to Stripe. We've got Stripe integration. And that is it. The Stripe handles the payments. You have effectively got a website. It's got a website through order.net, sure, but for MVP, that's what we wanted. We just wanted the ability to you have your own storefront. We will be, the more that we customize it, or the way I realistically put it is, the more interactions and the more engagement we get, if people are interested, the more customizations we can add. So we could then add custom URLs, we could then add custom skins. But from a merchant perspective, it is that as short a UX journey as we can make it.
Right.
From a developer perspective, that's different. You can just clone it off GitHub. You should. I mean, if you're a developer, you're expected to have some developer knowledge already. To get it up and running, you just need Docker for your local environment. We're working on we're working on cloud platform environments if you wanted to do development on, say, Heroku or AWS or DigitalOcean or something like that.
Wow. So, like, as a merchant there, you literally can be any size business and use this. You don't need to have a website. As long as you've got a business bank account and access to the internet, you can set it up and go. Yeah,
as long as you've got a Stripe account.
Stripe account as well. Right.
So,
okay.
And that comes into the way that we're developing as well. So if we have, it's open source, right? So if you want to, as long as you can come into the open source library in GitHub, and as long as you follow the code of conduct, as long as you follow our guidelines for contributing, if you say my business needs PayPal integration, we need PayPal integration in order to use this, then you can create that feature request in GitHub, but you can do it as a merchant rather than a developer, which is obviously quite bold thinking, but we're all tech savvy these days, apparently. If you run a business, apparently you're a tech business now. Data is the new oil, etc., etc. So if you want to do feature requests, you could do them. We won't always say yes to everything, because the magic bit of open source is it's free and it costs us a lot of time, resource, and money. But also, the more interest, the more we're likely to do it. And the reason why we're likely to do it, to be transparent, is it's good for Jump as a business. It's good for our profile. It's good for people to see the kind of standards and the work the engineering that we do, having our engineering out in the open with no sort of secret source behind the scenes. admittedly, that is very, very. It's very costly to do things the right way, but also people can see you are doing the right way. But it also potentially means you can ask for a feature and it just magically appears, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you touched on sort of what's next and the idea of helping with the whole table service. And, I'm pretty sure, as most people are, that the 4th of July, that, as many pubs and bars, etc., that can open will, and they're going to be overrun, of course. So, good luck with getting that over the line. But for the next steps, is this a trial period? Are you going to monetize it? What's the long-term plan for Order?
I think really the long term plan for it is already by trying to get the table service and live ordering system in place. We've already made a commitment at least to try and make this thing to give it legs and to give it a long term future. It's from a web agency in Birmingham. It is a product, and this is a learning experience for us as a company to really work and be focused on something that is product led rather than working for other people. We do work a bit like that anyway. I think really from a sort of a really, really big top down perspective, I think at Jump we have like that kind of AWS aspect of development where we take internal tooling and make it ourselves, and then we say, well, what we do is would we use this ourselves? And once it gets to that stage, is it good enough? Okay, well, let's release it then. So we want to give it legs, and so obviously that was one thing, getting the live table ordering system. But if we get enough demand and enough interest and enough engagement, especially from outside, and especially from probably the JavaScript community and probably from the Laravel community way outside of Birmingham, just worldwide. Then if we can get it going, we probably would start looking at a similar kind of the kind of way that WordPress is structured, the way that there's a core. It's why we called it Order Core on GitHub, where it's got legs, so we keep on developing for it, and then if it gets bigger, it's not sustainable realistically to just keep on developing a free product. So then we look at how to monetize it, and how to monetize it would undoubtedly be a private plugin system into it. So all of our stuff is developed and held as sort of private composer packages and things like that, where, I don't know, we get some sort of premium functions for merchants, like you can have an add-on that does loads of cool graphs for how your ordering system works, or where are your orders coming from, or what time of day, that kind of stuff. Any kind of data visualization plugins, or probably bespoke integrations, like if we were doing, I don't know, like email with Mandrill or something like that, or integrations with probably not payment providers, but any number of things like that, like maybe some Nexmo or Twilio kind of SMS and live chat kind of stuff. That's where if we're going to be like, because we're transparent with this, that's where the money would be.
Yeah. The core platform then, is that the aim, the ideal is to keep that free for?
Oh yeah, that's never going to change.
Brilliant.
I think we still haven't our opening issue that I created is we need to finish off our mission statement, but the mission statement will contain the whole thing, which is there is going to be, we're not going to follow the likes of I'm trying to think, are these people enough baddies now for me to just totally name drop them? Probably. We're not going to follow the classic meetup.com model, which is you take millions and millions of series A, B, and C VC funding, and the idea is you make it free for as long as possible. You get millions of people onto your platform, and then bang, you hit the light switch and say it costs you money. We're not going to do that. To be honest, as a company of our size at Jump, we probably don't have the capacity or inclination to ever try and make something that like is going to cost or require millions of pounds before we then start charging people. So that's just not how it's going to work. So the core of it and the core development of it will always be open source. I'm not going to say free because it's different. It's not going to just be free. It's going to be fully open source and compliant with standards with an MIT license.
Cool. I think I think we covered most of it there. I'm really, for me, it's great to see all the things that are coming out of a crisis, and I think we're definitely still there, and especially in Birmingham, there's so much going on that we just don't know about. So, I really appreciate the time today, and hopefully we can share this as much with our networks, and get other people talking about all the amazing stuff that you guys are doing, and hopefully also find out a bit more about what the rest of Birmingham's doing to help out where they can, really.
Yeah, I think it hooks into. I mean, Birmingham is a classic kind of. As I don't know culturally how it's managed to do this, but it's managed to hold on to its city of 1,000 trades kind of mantra, where in the tech community we are like this. It's split across little bits of really quite exciting innovation scattered all throughout the city. And is out of COVID, there are lots and lots of bits about this, and we notoriously do not shout about each other's stuff, and that's obviously stuff that we're trying to that sort of Silicon Canal and Birmingham Tech Week and Fusion are trying to change and address. I think there's one of the things that I've got that I'd like to try and take up in the pipeline is in terms of Birmingham's tech ecosystem. One of the things we're doing amazingly well at is education at the moment. In boot camps and initiatives. So we've got Bomb Lab and Open Code. We've got Code Bar, which is a free coaching mentoring and student session for groups of BAME and from underrepresented groups. And we've got School of Code, obviously, which has been a sort of a big success and continues to grow. So, and also Coder Bunker, Code Your Future has just become quite successful, and I'm hoping to interview Claire, who runs Code Your Future, which is for refugees in Birmingham, to teach them and bring them into the tech ecosystem. I think one of the plans for Order is, as it is open source, is that the best thing about tech is there's supposed to be no barrier to entry, and it's kind of addressed with schemes like is it Hacktober? What's the thing that's the DigitalOcean or GitLab? I can't remember who runs it. Hacktoberfest, where it's teaching you how to do a pull request and how to change code, and they start off really, really gently with just documentation. But Order is an open source project, so there's never any contribution that could be too small. That's never the case. So I would like to hook into all those schemes to try and encourage people that if you want to start coding, you can learn a bit of Laravel or you could learn a bit of Vue.js with this project. And at Jump and Order.net, the group that with Jump's developers, we're open to mentoring people to, if you want to do your first pull request, even if it's something simple like docs, or it's a small little kind of bit a utility command or something like that. Have a go and talk to us directly. And I'd like to give a platform for people to learn on that actually makes a real world difference.
That's a really interesting point, actually. And just before we sort of wrap up, I'd just like to go explore that a little bit. Do you feel that if more companies did more open source work, that would really help our community start to connect across all areas? And you're absolutely right. I completely agree, Jim, that we are almost in silos in Birmingham still. We've got so much going on, but getting everyone connected and discussing and collaborating, it's a hard job. Do you think open source, if more companies did similar sort of projects to Jump, could really be a way to help that connection?
It would be nice. Whether it's realistic, I don't really know. I quite like. I didn't like it when for a bit of background, I've been in Birmingham for 2 years. I moved from London after sort of 10, 11 years. At first, I didn't like the fact that there were all the silos and everything was sort of disconnected in Birmingham. And I think over the past sort of year or so, I've learned to quite like that, because when collaboration does happen, the light bulbs start going off, and everyone thinks, oh, well, we actually did this independently. what did you do? And then we start talking. And I think more of interaction between the silos happens than at first I think I first thought. But the open source bit, the open source part, absolutely, but it requires a vast to do it right and to get engagement and to get across a kind of to get agencies or product companies in Birmingham talking to each other about these things realistically takes a vast amount of time and effort, and I think it's a big ask. I would like to see it, but if I look at some of the product companies in Birmingham that have been quite successful, a lot of them I think could be ready to do smaller bits of open source work, and it could be a good cross collaboration platform tool. Whether people are willing to take that step forward is another thing. It goes hand in hand with community. I think open source could be collaboration could be built on top of the community aspect of it. So like our meetups, like Brum.js, like DevOps Birmingham, like Brum PHP and Ruby West Midlands and things like this. So the countless small things that are happening. But yeah, I'd like to, but it might be good to keep the conversation going, to keep agencies and product companies, especially the startup scene in Birmingham, which is part of that kind of small siloed bit, to get them engaged with open sourced stuff would be good, and I would like to see that. So maybe we could keep the conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you make some really interesting points on it, and yeah, I have to say I would agree. I mean, it's a big ask for anyone to take that level of commitment away from their day-to-day jobs or day-to-day products, and quite frankly, like you say, it's also costly. So,
but there are aspects of community and open source that's smaller companies. I say smaller companies in Birmingham. These could be these companies that I'm thinking of are fairly, would regard themselves as fairly small, but their turnover is pretty decent, quite high. The stereotype is community costs money and resource and doesn't achieve anything, and open source costs money and resource and doesn't achieve anything. But what a lot of companies aren't realizing that I would like to push from knowledge from open source and from the developer relations world is, if you hook into the right ecosystems with the integrations and the tooling that you're using, you start tapping into much larger multinational companies, and you'd be surprised when their communities might start getting interested in your work, and they will. If you look at the PHP world, which is what I'm primarily based in, Laravel's ecosystem is obviously quite healthy, but if you start getting the interest of if you start as an agency and you start working on open source work that gets the attention of people, you start getting into the space like Roav or Spatey. Those are from the Symfony worlds and from Laravel worlds, and they do have resource and time, and they can bring in people from Google and Microsoft that would look at it and go, oh, maybe we should just put some resources into that. I would like more people to be aware that is a big channel of interest and funding that you can get.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I'm sure most companies would be jumping at the chance like that, but like you say, maybe we just need to help educate a lot of people. I mean, that was, to be honest, that was completely news to me. I haven't really thought that process through, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
That kind of interest from my perspective, I would like businesses in the West Midlands to be more aware of those channels, because primarily from a community point of view, my only interest really is, apart from making sure that I do my day job well for my company, is leveling up the West Midlands as a tech hub. And that city of 1,000 trades and small silos and education that we've got are all recipes for making this quite a cool city with its own kind of mark on the tech industry. So as long as it's good for Birmingham, I don't care about sharing knowledge.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and me and you both have had enough of being Manchester's the second city, Bristol's up and coming, and Birmingham are just staying still. I'm sure we'd both disagree that's not the case. We just need to make sure
It's not true, but we don't sing up, as we notoriously know. We don't shout about ourselves much. So if you look underneath the surface,
yeah.
there are some very cool things going on, but you have to dig a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've really proven that today. So, look, Jim, thank you for your time. It's been great to chat to you. Really interesting in the fact that what Jump was looking to do with Order, and now, making it as a product, Order.net. And I'm sure that there'll be small businesses all around Birmingham who will be frantically looking it up right now.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, cool. All right. It's been
Thanks
a
so much,
pleasure.
Jack. Bye.
Cheers.